ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our main event! Hosted by Eric McMahon, it's Cage Time with John Morgan!
And welcome everybody, Cage Side with John Morgan. I am your host, Eric McMahon. Max Holloway does it again, fresh off his victory UFC on ESPN 44. He was not in attendance, but we're here to talk about it. John Morgan, what's up, pal?
I'm doing good, man. Yeah, I was not in attendance for that one. Got to stay home in Las Vegas. Did stop by the PFL for a little bit. Got a little time at home with the family, but certainly was tuned in to watch that. And Max Holloway told Father Tom to just chill for a little bit.
Chill for a little bit. I posed the question last week. What Max Holloway are we going to see? Did he look slow just because Volk was that good and it widened the gap that much more, but he is still vintage Max Holloway? Or did he drop off? I think we can say 2 degrees, he's still vintage Max Holloway.
I think so. That's what it reminded me of. I mean, listen, everybody's going to slow down a little bit over time. As we touched on, he's still young, but he started so early that his body has been through a lot. So you're still waiting on it, and maybe it wasn't the best Max Holloway, but I find a lot of trouble in criticizing anything I saw in this performance. This was veteran savvy. This was a dominant performance over Arnold Allen, who is really, really good. Like, I don't walk away from this fight thinking anything less about Arnold Allen. I think this is just that fight that Arnold Allen needed on that journey, right? Like, everything's going good. You're working hard. You're picking up these wins. And then you get to that point and you meet that guy and you go, oh, okay, here's where I got to get to. This is how I have to perform. And I think Max Holloway was that moment. But Max just looked great, man. He's just so calm in there, so smooth. I mean, in the fire, he's just so aware. It's like things are happening in slow motion for him, man. He's so great out there. Phenomenal performance. I guess the only kind of downside is you don't really know what's next for him. You know what I mean? And that makes this performance a little bit frustrating.
And we'll get there. And we'll get there. We're going to touch on that. But Max Holloway, 24-7, 20-7 in UFC defeats via unanimous decision. A very impressive Arnold Allen in defeat. Now, Max Holloway joins the 20-win UFC club. How impressive is that?
It's amazing when you think about it. I mean, not only does it take a long time to do there. I mean,
20
even if
wins.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, even if you were to go 20-0, I mean, most guys, especially once you get to the highest level, like 3 fights a year in the UFC, especially at the level that Max Holloway has been at. It's one thing if you're kind of, down there coming in early, and you're facing the lower tier and you're just kind of getting your feet wet. But when you're talking about championship fights and #1 contender fights, you can't fight all the time. So even if you're fighting 3 times a year and you went undefeated, it's still going to take you 7 years of being at the highest level of the sport to accomplish that. And obviously he has had some setbacks along the way, and he has had some. So, I mean, it's just unbelievable, man. To pick up 20 wins, that's kind of like one of those benchmarks. You know what I mean? Like in certain sports, you hit a certain number of points, a certain number of home runs, a certain number. 20 wins in the UFC, that's a heck of an accomplishment. That's as if you need another reason to know why this guy's going to be in the UFC Hall of Fame one day.
And the reaction that Max Holloway he even said something like, Kansas City, it's the 5th island. Like, people, he's kind of saying that. Vegas is the 5th island.
Yeah.
Everywhere is going to be the 5th island or 4th, or I don't know, one of the islands, right? An additional Hawaiian island. Because that's how over and beloved Max Holloway is. And it just like, I can't sing his praises enough of just take the fighting out of it. What an inherently likable guy he seems to be.
Well, for all you geography experts out there, there are 8 Hawaiian islands. They call Las Vegas the 9th island because there's such a Hawaiian population out there. He fought so many times in Toronto, he started calling it the 10th island. But anywhere Max Holloway goes becomes another Hawaiian island, and you're so right about it because it is his fighting style. I mean, #1, he's an incredibly fun fighter to watch, right? I mean, his style is fun. He goes up there, he's boxing. I'm the best boxer in the UFC, baby, as he's looking off to the side. I mean, that was one of the craziest moments you'll ever see. But you're right. It's not just the fighting style. He's just a likable dude, man. He's humble, remains true to himself. Seems to be a good dad, always pumping his son up. I mean, there's just so many things to like about Max Holloway. And I think I can't imagine there's anybody that cheers against Max Holloway.
And if there is, I'm going to punch that person in the face. All right. Unless you have a deep tie to his opponent. But
yes.
I mean, if you're cheering against Max Holloway with no rooting interest, like, then you're just a bad person.
I mean, even if you're like Arnold Allen's family, you had to be like, man, we want our guy to win. But, Max is a good dude. He's a good
man. I do want to talk about Arnold Allen here in a second, but the stats that Max Holloway not only put up in this fight, but he's put up over his career are mind-boggling. And then I'm going to give you a contradictory on my own personal opinion, which is going to maybe a hot take, but I'm just preferencing it now. But I don't know how the exact statistics for that fight in particular, but now with that fight against Arnold Allen, over 3,000 significant strikes in his UFC career.
That's unbelievable. I mean, it really is mind-boggling to think about that. I mean, the amount of cage time you need to accrue numbers like that. And that just goes to speak to why he's so calm in there, why he's so relaxed in there. Like I said, it looks like everything's just happening slow motion. I mean, as you well know, mixed martial arts, it's the most chaotic sport, I think, of anything. I mean, going in there and one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat in a cage fight, and there's punches and kicks and takedowns, and everything's happening. It's so wild, and that's your nerves are there, and the adrenaline is there, and it's so chaotic, and he's just been able to calm it all down and perform. I mean, the numbers that he's going to continue to accrue. And again, we think about how young he still is. Maybe the body not young in terms of how much he's been through, but still young. He still has a long way to go, and he said it this week. He said, listen, I still have championship aspirations. You think I'm out here just fighting to fight? Like, that's not it. No. I'm out here chasing the best. So the type of numbers that he's going to rack up when he's done are going to be unbelievable.
All right. I'm going to give you the contradiction. And this was just from me watching like a bum from my couch. I think Max Holloway, for the most part in that fight, was just fighting on cruise control. Right. And honestly, for a little bit too much for me. When Max Holloway decided to let off his combos, he hit on every single one of them. And I'm going to give you a statistic. Okay. He has gone the distance in 8 straight fights.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we talk about calmness under pressure. We talk about his composure. We talk about how good he is. And this is, man, I'm on the Blessed Express, so I don't want this to be too critical of Max Holloway. I think he allowed Arnold Allen to stay competitive in that fight. I truly believe it. And not saying that he would have finished him, but I think that margin of victory would have been a lot wider if Max, I'm not going to say he wasn't fully engaged, because his significant strikes and the metrics were still off the charts, but just watching from his willingness to go, he was going to sit back, dodge, maybe take a jab, maybe take an overhand, and then and then rinse and repeat. Where I think if he could have followed up on these a little bit more, done something, that margin of victory would have been wider.
Listen, I think that is a fair criticism, to be honest with you. I think, Max, but you also have to remember who he's facing in these fights as well. You know what I mean? He's facing the very best competition available. Like I said, this man has not fought in like non-main event, non-championship fights in how long? So, I mean, he's fighting the absolute best of the best in there. And I think he does know, look, I know my durability is sound. Let's test yours. Are you still going to be that guy in round 4? Are you still going to be that guy in round 5? Because I know I am. And I think because of that, maybe he doesn't want to put himself in any high-risk positions early on by maybe pressing more, because he knows he can still be there at the end. I think it's a fair criticism, but I do think it's important to point out, look, these performances are against the absolute best in the sport. He's not in there facing any bums and saying, why isn't this guy getting this guy out of there? That's all I say. Early on in a mixed martial arts career, you're going to face early on in your career some less talented people than you if you're destined for the biggest shot. And I always say is, but are you getting him out of there in the first round? Like, if you were going against an overmatched opponent, are you showing that it's an overmatched opponent? And Max did that early in his career, but now it's just, man, he's fighting the absolute best of the best. I mean, Arnold Allen is a monster. And I believe that man will fight for a UFC title at some point in his career. I believe this is going to be that moment in his career where he says, okay, now I see where I need to be at. Now I know where this stands. And I don't think Arnold Allen should walk away from this feeling bad. He was competitive in this, and he won the 5th round. You know what I mean? So he's got that to put in his back pocket. You know, Dana White kind of criticized him a little bit. And I think it's maybe fair. You know, where was that guy in round 5, in rounds 1 through 4? You know, why couldn't you fight that way? Maybe he held a little bit in the tank a little bit too long. And that's a discussion to be had. I think a lot of people worried that Arnold will be a little too aggressive, a little too wild, and Max would be able to, you know, kind of precision outpoint him. So I think that's maybe why he held back a little bit as well. So an interesting fight, man. It really is. But I think your criticism is fair. But I would point out again, don't forget that Max Holloway is facing the absolute best of the best every time he gets in there.
Yeah, and I want to make something perfectly clear here. I'm not criticizing him for going to the distance in 8 straight fights. I mean, he fought Volk 3 times. He fought Ortega.
Ortega. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right,
I mean,
and he made him look
Poirier.
slow,
Poirier.
Right, up a weight class. So that's not, and I don't want this to be criticism. I'm more or less talking about from the standpoint of Max is that good. If he wanted to step on the gas in that fight, I believe he could have. And I believe he could have made that margin of victory bigger, which then probably could have taken away Dana White's criticism of Arnold Allen's coaches. I think they're all weirdly correlated.
I think they are. I think they are really tied together. And I think you put it right. Is it like, listen, I mean, it's not necessarily criticism of saying you're not delivering. It's just saying, hey, you know you're at this level, you know, and you've been at this level. How do you get back to that level? How do you get over that Alexander Volkanovski hurdle that continues to remain in front of you? How do you get back to that championship level? Because Max said it himself. Look, I'm not fighting out here just to fight. I'm not out here just collecting a paycheck. I'm not just trying to make some more money for myself. I want to be champion again. And so I think if you look at it, you've got to be able to criticize yourself, or at least, you know, see where I can get better, even in victories. And I think that's why I say I think it's a fair assessment to say, hey, no, what you're doing is incredibly effective and incredibly good. But if you want to take it up that extra notch, this is maybe the opportunity to do that.
And if I'm going to start splitting hairs, which I hate because I'm on the Blessed Express, I hate that I'm going to do this right now, but this is 2 MMA guys talking MMA.
Mm-hmm.
When he's fighting Jose Aldo and knocking him out twice, he's initiating. You know, when he's fighting Calvin Kattar and brutalizing him, and Ortega and brutalizing him and showing why he is the best boxing, he's initiating. Arnold Allen, he became a counterpuncher in this fight. And I think it was just that supreme confidence he had. Like, why am I going to put myself in these dangerous positions? But that's just what I'm saying. I think he could have been the initiator. I'm not going to say he could have finished Arnold Allen, because Arnold Allen is so good. So good. And he's going to be there. Give that kid another year and a half. Have him fight another people. He ain't going to fight too many people on Max Holloway's, but have him fight some of those topper echelon guys. Like, how great would an Ortega and Arnold Allen fight be?
Oh, amazing,
right? Arnold Allen is going to be there. But to Max even said afterwards, like, my goal was to not even get punched in the face in this fight. You know, so it really took me as he's like, I'm going to be able to do what I want. And to degrees he did in a cruise control fashion. That's really all I want to say. But it's more of not a criticism of Max Holloway. It's more of a praise of like how good the guy is. And I believe if he wanted to, that margin of victory could have been a lot bigger.
I think it's a fair assessment. I really do. And I think you've done well to say, look, we're not criticizing the guy for not performing because he is at the highest level of sport. But that just goes to speak that veteran savvy that he has. Like I said, everything seems to happen in slow motion in there for him, man. He has control of everything. But you are right, man. When I think about Max Holloway with an edge, Max Holloway with a chip on his shoulder, that dude's a little bit more dangerous, right? So maybe Max is trying to save that one if he can get Volkanovski one more time.
So we said that Max Holloway, with his 27 UFC fights, 20 UFC victories, he now becomes the third all-time in ring minutes. 7 hours, 15 minutes, and 47 seconds of UFC fight time. I haven't slept that much in 2 nights combined.
I'm telling you, man, you cannot understand and really process what that means. I mean, everybody that gets in there is nervous every single time they do it. The first time, it's incredibly overwhelming. So to accrue that much cage time where you're just comfortable in there, you just know what that cage feels like. You just know, how to conduct yourself in there. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. 7+ hours of time in the UFC octagon.
7 hours, 15 minutes, 47 seconds, trailing only RDA and Frankie Edgars, and we know the legendary careers both of them have had. But damn, that's a long time. I want to get, if I could sleep that long one night, like
just one night. Just one night.
Just one night. So let's go ahead and move on to the co-main event. Edson Barboza viciously knocks out Billy Q, Quarantino, and vintage Edson Barboza performance.
Edson Barboza is phenomenal, man. Yeah, that was one of those remind you of how dangerous he can be. And that's a guy too. Edson Barboza, same thing. He's like, look, I've been in this game for a long time. He's been in the UFC for like 13 years now, which is incredible to think. And he's like, look, I'm not, another guy says, look, I'm not just fighting to fight. Like, I still believe I can be the best in the world. And this was one of those performances that show why it's such a scary guy. I mean, his whole career, Edson Barboza, you knew if you were fighting Edson Barboza, you were going to walk away in some pain afterwards. Win or lose, your legs were going to be chopped up. You know, he was going to be just coming at you. And this was just a perfectly executed, just brutal knee. And I thought it was so interesting afterwards. He went over to Billy Quarantillo afterwards and like, man, we drilled that the entire time. It was funny because I don't think Billy necessarily wanted to hear it at that exact time. You know, like,
don't tell me my shirt falls right now, bro. Tell me that I did good.
Yeah, I think Edson was doing it out of respect, you know, like he was trying to say, like, hey, man, we drilled that the whole time because we noticed that tendency that, you know, you tend to throw a jab and then duck for the takedown. So, you know, good on his team to see that, to pick up on that, and great on him to execute it, and respect on Edson to try to share to his opponent, hey, FYI, we knew that was coming, but you could tell Billy was like, not right now, bro, not right now. But it is great. Edson Barboza, he's as dangerous of a striker as there has ever been in the UFC. And his highlight reel is full of just absolutely vicious knockouts. Obviously, the Terry Edom one is the one that like lives in history as one of the greatest knockouts of all time. But that dude is just dangerous. And you know what? Credit to Billy Q, because Billy Quarantillo said, I want this fight because he is such a dangerous fighter and I have such respect for him. And unfortunately for Billy Q, he's got to go back to the drawing board now and build his way back up.
And I think Billy Q was doing exactly what he needed to do. He was pushing the action, he was pressing the pace. Edson Barboza looked vintage, but you could tell he took this fight utterly seriously. A lot of times Edson Barboza is a very stagnant fighter. Right in front of you, he's like, I'm going to get off, and I'm going to get off harder before you can get off on me. He was moving left and right a ton, and he was ripping some vicious shots to the body in that fight, which in my opinion literally drew Billy Q in a little bit more to then set up that knee. It looked like he knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he set it up from the moment that bell rung.
Well-designed game plan, well-executed game plan, and it was a big one. I mean, for Edson Barboza at 37 years old, you know, he had the back-to-back losses to Giga and to Bryce Mitchell, and I think, you know, a lot of people were wondering, is this guy still worthy? I mean, obviously, we love the guy. There's another guy. If you're an MMA fan, there's no way you don't like watching Edson Barboza fight. You know what I mean? He has a fan-friendly style. He comes out and attacks, but you remember he had gone through that lengthy losing streak. He had rebounded with a couple of victories, and he suffered losses again. I think this was one of those where even Edson probably had to prove to himself, prove to his family, prove to everybody around him. And they're like, no, I still belong at this level, and I still can compete. Now, I mean, you could, gosh, the emotion that he had, you could tell how much this meant to him, man. And it just, you know, exploded on the microphone afterwards and, you know, cheered. It was a great scene, but a huge win for Edson Barboza and, you know, really proved that, hey, I can still face the best in the world.
The Achilles heel of Edson Barboza are those strong grappling type. I'm not going to give you any space. I'm going to suffocate you. I'm going to drag you to the mat, and I'm not going to let you up and give you space to operate. Edson Barboza staved off a couple like pretty aggressive takedown from the cage. He did his work. He dug underhooks. He pushed that face up. He was able to spin out, then spin, throwing a couple more kicks, invited Billy Q in to throw that jab, shoot for the takedown, lights out. And the way Billy Q fell was, I mean, that was a vicious, scary fall too.
It really was. And like you said, you touched on earlier, that I think Billy Q was doing the right things. It's just, unfortunately, he has a tendency to repeat the same patterns that his team, that Barboza's team had identified, and they were ready for that exact move. And listen, all fighters do. I mean, it's, you know, even the ones that seem to be random, you can find patterns in movement just because that's the way the brain works. And unfortunately, they identified that pattern for Billy Q. He'll be back. Billy Quarantillo, he'll be back as well. He's got some big fights ahead of him. And Edson Barbosa, we'll see what the UFC does. I'm with you. You know, I hope the UFC continues to give him just strikers. Just match him up with strikers. Match him up with fun fights. You know, we don't know how much longer he's going to be around. I mean, still does look to be in phenomenal shape at 37 years old. So, I mean, he could still keep going for a while. He isn't hinting at retirement anytime soon. But you are right. When he goes against those dominant grapplers, that's when he struggles. I hope they just keep matching him up with strikers and just give us phenomenal fight of the night type performances every time out.
Can't let this podcast go without talking about, I guess, one of everybody's favorite, another just tremendously likable guy, Clay Guida, pisses Dana White off.
I hated to hear that because you're right, man. I love Clay Guida. You know, he's his MMA career, obviously, he's another guy that's been in the UFC for, I think he's going on 15, 16 years now, which is incredible. We've seen him out at Fury Professional Grappling. He's had a handful of performances out there. High energy, always a positive message. You know what I mean? Just a great dude. And, you know, it's funny because the joke he pulled got me. I thought he was retiring as well. You know, he took his gloves off.
My wife goes, Eric, upstairs, you need to help with the kids, getting them into the bath. And I said, wait a second, Clay Guida's going to retire, because I saw him take him off.
You know, they went, they were going
to tell his mom happy birthday. Hey, listen, I can't hate that.
I know. It was, I was bummed to hear Dana say that because, you know, listen, the first thing he did, so he calls to get the gloves, he takes them off, we think he's retiring, he says, I'm not retiring, and then I thought he did a cool thing. He said, hey, I want to trade gloves with Rafa Garcia, which I love that. I've seen this a little bit more and more in MMA where guys will trade their jerseys or whatever, which is, you know, kind of started in soccer, and we've seen it kind of bleed over to other sports as well. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I like that. I wish people would do more of it. Like I said, when your career is all said and done, do you want to have 20 different shirts that all have your name on it? Or would you like to have, like, framed on the wall, like, one jersey of every guy that you competed against? You know, that's a chapter in your story, a part of your career. So I loved what he did there. But then Clay, as much as we all love him, does tend to be a little bit long-winded on the mic from time to time. And as Dana said, and as you are well aware of, producing a live show is a little bit challenging sometimes. And we did not have this time carved out for you to have this lengthy message on the mic. So I know Daniel was upset. Hopefully he was overstating his frustrations a little bit. I know he has a lot of respect for Clay Guida, so hopefully they move past that very quickly, because I hated to hear that Dana was mad at Clay.
I would be remiss if I did not take the moment now to say happy birthday, Mrs. Guida.
Yes, ma'am. Happy birthday.
So I got a great story about Clay Guida. When we talk about just great human, he was fighting, I don't even know what UFC was. It was UFC, I don't know, 105. Who knows? He was here in Memphis, Tennessee, headlined by BJ Penn and Diego Sanchez. This is when Diego Sanchez came out as like weirdo Diego Sanchez and started the whole yes movement, right? So Clay Guida, they did weigh-ins the night of a Memphis Grizzlies basketball game. So they had the arena cleared. They did the weigh-ins, and then they cleared everybody out of the arena to put the court down, and we had a game that night. So I was in the arena for both because obviously I work for the Memphis Grizzlies. And I see Clay Guida just sitting in the stands, eating some fruit, and he kind of noticed that I worked, and he goes, hey, can you show me a way out of here where I don't have to go through the front doors? He's like, I'm not feeling fan interaction right now. Now, completely understandable. You just came off a horrific weight cut. They didn't do weight cuts in the morning. They did weight cuts you live in front of everyone.
That was before it was ceremonial. Like, that was the actual weigh-in.
Right. And so I said, you got it, pal. Follow me. So we start talking. It's like, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, oh, I work for the Grizzlies. He's like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a mascot. And he's like, no way, man. Blah, 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 blah. And, you know, Clay, he just... And he's like, I actually came to the game the other night. I bought nosebleed tickets. And I said, dude, just reach out. I said, we'll hook you up. I'll hook you up with tickets. And he goes, can I go to the game tonight? And I said, Clay, absolutely. I said, awesome. Give me your number. I'll get you hooked up. We ended up getting him courtside tickets. I said, now I'm going to give you courtside tickets, but you need to, like, when we bring the camera on you, you need to give it to me because I'm going to bottom third it with UFC fighter Clay Guida. I need the whole 9 yards. He's like, it seemed like the greatest thing that ever happened to him. Right. And he's like, yeah, my Winnebago's like right outside. I'll go park it, or like, true story. And
I know.
So I give him tickets to the game, get him courtside. He does the whole 9 yards. Then about 30 minutes after the game, I'm in my locker room. I'm just in the shower still. And they said, hey, Eric, some guy's out here saying he wants to talk to you. I said, well, and not knowing it's Clay Guida, I go, tell me he's got to wait. I'm in the shower right now. So then I take my time and I come out. I said, okay, who wants to talk to you? It's like, I don't know, some guy. And I walk outside. It's Clay Guida. 45 minutes after the game had ended.
Wow.
Still sitting courtside waiting for me to come out so he could personally thank me again for the seats. Then invites me to his post-fight after party.
That's so awesome, man.
Then
I
texts
love that.
me again the next morning about what a great time he had. The day he's fighting, he texts me again that morning.
Dude, that is awesome. What a great story, man. That really does describe the character of Clay Guida, man, the type of dude he is. That's, like I said, it's just always positive, man. It's always good interactions. Like you said, he'll take the time and listen to you. I mean, he's going to ask you questions about your life and what's going on with you. And that's the best, man. That's why everybody loves Clay Guida. So hopefully Dana White gets over it real quick, man.
Dana, get over it, man. It's live entertainment. It's in the past. You're moving on to the new event. No holding grudge here. I don't think anybody can hold a grudge against Clay Guida. Last thing we're going to talk about at UFC is Zach Cummings and Ed Herman both retire. Kind of a special moment, albeit a fight that probably could have happened in 2010, but good to see the old dogs in the cage, right?
No, I love it. You know what I mean? We end up getting this double retirement, which is incredible. But I loved it because it was two kind of older guys in the sport going at it. And so many times, I mean, damn near every time, right? How does an old guy go out? It's facing the new young lion. And you know, that wasn't this. I thought the matchmaking on this was perfect. And I thought the spirit that both guys showed was incredible. Obviously, it was marred a little bit by the two illegal up kicks, but, you know, I saw Ed, you know, talk to Zach afterwards and apologize for that. You know, didn't mean it, you know, no ill will. But, yeah, emotional, man. Zach Cummings gets to have his daughter in his arms as he talks about, you know, this recovery from a horrific back injury he had, but he had to come out here and fight in front of her one time in his hometown in Kansas City. Unbelievable. Then Ed Herman calls it a career as well, and a double retirement. I don't remember seeing that too often at all, double retirement. And we just criticized Dana White and asked him to get over Clay Guida, you know, his frustration there. But you got to praise Dana White for saying, gave those guys an extra $50,000 each, kind of made it an unofficial fight of the night as a little parting gift on their way out the door. I thought that was a class act, and those guys deserved it because they laid it all out there, man. I thought that was an amazing moment.
And all you people out there who are complaining about fighter pay, Dana White does this a hell of a lot more than you even know. He's giving people locker room bonuses that are not publicized. He's like, listen, where this man is taking the sport and you know, philanthropy effort, he's funding high school sports programs. He's doing all this stuff. Like, some people need to get off their back. This ain't pro boxing. It's not one promoter that promotes themselves and only themselves. That's pretty much all I want to say on that.
And, well, yeah, and listen, man, I understand people are always going to push for better fighter pay. Everybody in every job in the world, right? Everybody thinks they deserve more money. So I totally understand pushing for it. But you're right. There's so much that happens behind the scenes. Stevie Ray, who fought at PFL this past weekend, his daughter needs surgery, and he was talking about the fundraiser that was done on GoFundMe or one of those kicks or whatever, one of those sites. But anyway, Dana White donated $10,000 of his own money to a former UFC fighter that's fighting for another organization. And things like this happen all the time. So understand, I'm not trying to say Dana White is above criticism and everything he does is right, but there's a whole lot of things that he does right behind the scenes that he just never seems to get recognized for.
We are criticizing you, Dana, for being pissed at our boy Clay Guida, though. We are criticizing that.
Get over it.
Get over it, Dana. All righty. PFL, you were there. What did we miss? I was working. I couldn't watch it, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it was great, man. I really have I love the PFL's concept, man. When they first, and I've said this multiple times, but I'll say it again. When they first launched, I thought, man, this is kind of gimmicky, this whole standings and season things. But I've come to really love it because it's cool. At the beginning of every year, you've got this group of fighters that if they win, they can get $1 million. It's not like, oh, I need to call out this person, or I need to hope the matchmaking happens this way, or I've got to do this social media post, or I've got to create a storyline. It's like every year it's opening day basically on the season. And if you go win your 4 fights, you go get $1 million. And so they came to Las Vegas, which was awesome. You know, seeing them set up at the Virgin over there, which used to be the old joint at the Hard Rock. It was a great setup inside there. It was their 3rd straight event. You had some big wins there, man. Sadabusi, the returning champion, he had a big win. Clay Collard and Yamato Nishikawa, they absolutely went at it. Olivier Aubin-Mercier ruined the debut of Shane Burgos coming to PFL, which, you know, frustrating for him. But it just goes to show, man. And you know, you see sometimes these criticisms, like a high-profile athlete will sign with a new organization. You know, somebody will leave the UFC and they'll go to the new organization and they'll suffer a loss, and people will criticize and say, oh, well, that new organization didn't get their money's worth. I argue the exact opposite, man. It goes to show you that, hey, man, just because that guy was having success in the UFC, he was ranked in the UFC. Remember, Dana White said, we messed up. We shouldn't have let that guy go. There was a glitch in the contract, and we didn't pay attention to it. And he comes over here and he loses. It just goes to show you there's quality athletes on organizations' rosters around the world. Just because something isn't the UFC doesn't mean it's not worthy of your time. Doesn't mean that there's not quality individuals in there. There are. So great run from the PFL here in Las Vegas. They'll wait till June to pick it up again. Those shows will be in Atlanta. Sounds like they might come out back to Vegas more frequently, which I hope they do, because it was cool having going to a show that was in my backyard. I went to the show, covered some of the fights, and I left and went to my kid's soccer game. So it was when I could do both in the same night, man, I'm a happy man.
So what we call a win-win. Moving on, you got Bellator 294 Friday, 295 Saturday, 294. I don't even really want to get into it all that much. Little ho-hum, headlined by Liz Carmouche and Deanna Bennett. Anything worth noting on 294?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a solid main.
I don't want, and not meant to disrespect any of the fighters.
No, I know what you're saying. It's just it's kind of overshadowed by the next night, right? I mean, that you listen, a title fight in the main event. Sarah McMahon is making her Bellator debut. Obviously, a former UFC title challenger. Danny Sabatello's on there, so just watch out for that dude on the mic.
Danny Sabatello.
He's great. I love that guy, man. He's one, the first time I ever interviewed him. Literally, as soon as we got done with the interview, I texted his manager. I'm like, that guy might be my new favorite fighter now, man. I just love the trash that he talks on there. So it's a good card, but the Bellator is in Hawaii, and so what they do when they go to Hawaii is they do these back-to-backs, and so the first night, Friday night, is free for everybody. It's a great thing they do. It's free if you're in the military. It's free if you're a first responder, and they just say, come on out, have a good time. That's us giving back to the community. They help raise some funds. But then the next night, Saturday night, Bellator 295, that they're selling tickets to. So it's always like that when they do two. The first night's a good card, but the second night is the one where it's really at, because that's the one they're trying to sell tickets to and they're trying to sell out. And they've done that with Bellator 295, including a fight that I have been looking forward to so long, man. The Grand Prix final, this Bantamweight Grand Prix, stacked with talent. We talk about good fighters outside of the UFC. This Bellator Grand Prix was loaded with talent. And the final that we got, Rafion Stotts versus Patchy Mix, $1 million on the line, title on the line. And these two dudes have been kind of jawing back and forth at each other.
Stotts is throwing out a lot of big predictions, shall we say.
Yes, he is. He's like, hey, man, he said, look, he did an interview with one of our guys recently where he said, hey, I respect him, but I think I'm going to beat the S out of him, you know? So it's
that's the one I read.
These two guys are good, man. They're so good. This is going to be, I mean, this is high level mixed martial arts. If you're an MMA fan, you want to tune in for this on Saturday night.
Anything else on that card that's really going to get our juices flowing from a high-profile perspective?
Yeah, it's actually loaded. I mean, Ilima-Lei Macfarlane, the former champ, she's back. She's had a couple setbacks. And
the princess of Hawaii.
She is, man. Her entrances are always amazing, especially in Hawaii, man. In Bellator, you know, they do it up, right? They lean into it. They do the big presentation, so you can imagine that her walk-in is going to be special. And this is a fight that she says, listen, I know I've got to win here. I think my career is kind of hanging in the balance. I want to make another title run. But I also know that these setbacks I've had, you know, I know that I'm not long for this game. Aaron Pico's on the card against James Gonzalez. Aaron Pico, of course, I think the dude is still a stud. You know, he was, I think he kind of rushed a little bit. You know what I mean? Tried too much, too many.
Let's hope that shoulder stays in socket. I can't take another situation like that.
I can't see that either. And also Ray Borg versus Kyoji Horiguchi. That's another phenomenal fight. Horiguchi and Borg, both high-level fighters. That's fantastic. And then just from an entertainment side, Yancy Medeiros is on the card. Mads Burnell is on the card. So there's a couple of really good fights on Saturday night as well. So back-to-back in Hawaii. I know all the journalists that made the trip out there. I've been out there before. It's pretty cool to be out in Hawaii, man. It's a pretty cool setup. All the staff loves it. All the staff loves it as well. Another one that the UFC said, Dana White said this week, I don't think we'll ever make it out to Hawaii. I know that was a bummer for a lot of people. Because Bellator goes up there and they have a really good time.
And we have a UFC card this weekend as well. Anything of major note? I know we got Curtis Blades going, and
so look, this was going to fly under the radar a little bit because Sergey Pavlovich, Curtis Blades, neither one of them big talkers by any stretch. But this is a really intriguing fight. It's meaningful in the rankings. I mean, Right now we're waiting to get John Jones and Stipe Miocic. So it's maybe not a number one contender fight, or maybe it's a number one contender fight that has to wait to see what happens there. But it's a big fight. It's Sergey is scary. I mean, the dude right now is just mowing through people, but Curtis Blaydes, a phenomenal wrestler. So it's really going to be that the tension in that first round is really going to be where it's at, because Pavlovich is an absolute killer. He just comes out of the gate trying to mow you down. Curtis Blaydes, though, if he can wrestle, if he can get the fight to the floor, it's going to make it tough. So that one's on there. And then, as we do, just fight nights at the Apex, you got some good matchups, maybe not the biggest. I mean, Ricky Simone versus Song Yadong, that's a good fight. Brad Tavares is on there. Bobby Green is back. I spoke to Bobby Green this week.
Saw that interview.
This guy is a lot of fun, man. He's always so fun to talk to, man. And Bobby Green says he's retiring after this fight. And I was like, oh, man, what? You're retiring? He said, yeah, I'm retiring, but I'm coming back as king. He's gonna legally change his name to just King. He's like, I'm like Prince. You know what I mean? I'm starting this new thing in my career. I'm like Kanye. You're just gonna call me one name, King. We both kind of had a laugh because I was like, I wonder how Bruce Buffer's going to figure that out. He started cracking up. He's like, I was thinking the same thing. Like, how's he going to announce me? It's just one syllable, just King. I mean,
I'm thinking in my head now.
But he's fun. Bobby Green is so much fun to watch fight. So that'll be a good one. He's facing Jared Gordon. A couple of CFFC vets, Matthew Simmelsberger and Jeremiah Wells are on there. So there's some good stuff. Hana Yaya, I mean, the old school jiu-jitsu grappling. I mean, that dude is pure jiu-jitsu, man. He's always fun to watch fight.
Old school, too.
Old school, man. Been around the game forever, man. And so he's always fun to watch. Muhammad Usman, Kamaru's brother, is on this card as well. So, listen, there's some fun fights over this weekend. You got one championship in action on Friday night as well. So there's a lot of MMA this weekend.
All right. We pushed through a lot of the housekeeping that we needed to. Now I just want to get into some talking, and I buried kind of a lead here. I purposely didn't bring this up on our pre-pod conference call that we had about what we're going to talk about, because we know about something we're going to talk about later in Jake Paul and Nate Diaz, which we'll get to that. I need to talk about what the heck is going on with Francis Ngannou and the opportunities that this man is missing. And now there are multiple people that are starting to clamor about it. Is this guy being represented right? Or is there something that we don't know out there? Because let's take it back. I'm not re-signing with the UFC, the most lucrative heavyweight contract in the history of the company. Better than, John Jones, better than Brock Lesnar. And I want to seek other opportunities for XYZ reasons. What are true, what aren't, I don't know. The ship may be sailing right now on the marketability of Francis Ngannou. What in the world is going on here?
It's funny because I'm a little bit worried about Francis Ngannou as well. Francis, obviously, man, phenomenal to watch compete, right? I mean, it's just the power that he packs is unbelievable. A nice dude in every interaction I've ever had with him. I know Dana White is not his biggest fan, doesn't necessarily have to do business. I don't have to do business with Francis Ngannou, so I've never had negotiations with him. But every time I've ever talked to him, he'll come up, a lot of respect. I mean, he's always great. But I'm worried about him right now because I think he deserves these opportunities. I mean, he is an incredibly marketable athlete, right? And I know that he wanted to be a boxer. I mean, his story is well told, right? When he started training, when he went to France for a better life, he went into the gym saying, I want to be a boxer. Fernando Lopez said, I think if I can teach you MMA, I can get you to the highest level a lot faster. How about that? He didn't even know what MMA was. He was like, all right, I'll try MMA. But he grew up watching Mike Tyson. He wanted to box. So when he got to this point in his career where he said, listen, I'm waiting out my UFC contract because I'm going to go chase after this opportunity to go box, I was happy for him, and I want to see the guy get paid. But you're 100% right. As each day passes, I start to get a little bit worried that he's not going to find the deal he wants, right? I mean, we don't hear his name being bantered about in these boxing matchups. Other fights are being made right now. And on the MMA side, Dana White has come out and said, I'm not doing business with him anymore. So even if he comes back to me, like, I'm just done. That ship has sailed. David Feldman came out with BKFC and said, the guy's asking for way too much money. We're not going to do anything with him. I kind of assumed PFL would be the landing spot because they're getting into the pay-per-view business, but Jake Paul signed with them as well. And I kind of thought those would be a package deal. You put Francis Ngannou on a pay-per-view. You put Jake Paul on a pay-per-view. You put Kayla Harrison on there. All right, now you got some people that want to. But as you just mentioned, Jake Paul is boxing Nate Diaz in August. So When's that pay-per-view gonna have? So you're right. It just seems like the options are limited, and they're going away and they're running out. I'm a little bit worried right now for Francis Ngannou.
I look at this from a perspective of representation. And or it's either he's not being properly represented and or they're not being completely transparent with all of us fans, which is very plausible. Because maybe they do have something massive in the works that we don't know about. Or he's being not let, and a lot of people have come out and said, whoever is leading these decisions in his career are doing him a tremendous disservice. Because like I said, every day that goes by is every day he becomes less and less and less relevant. And that's no disrespect to the Predator. That's just saying out of sight, out of mind. That's human nature. Okay. So it's either that's the case, or could he still be dealing with a lot of injuries that we don't know about, which I think is a very plausible scenario as well. Because Dana White came in and he said he wanted no part of Jon Jones. He was definitive in talking about that. We offered him everything, and the bottom line is he didn't want Jon Jones. Now I'm not seeing him take fights. And now I'm not saying Dana was right. Dana may have been blasting him on the way out. Could there be some elements to truth? Not that he was scared of Jon Jones, that these injuries that he have the knee, it's not there. And that's going to prohibit him from training and seeking the highest level in the sport of boxing as well. I have to throw that out there.
That's actually a really good point that I hadn't truly considered. I think you might be onto something. Yeah, first of all, take what Dana White says with a little bit of a grain of salt. When he says things like that, like, oh, he didn't want anything with Jon Jones, it makes it seem like you're saying, oh, what, he was scared of? No. That's meaning he was turning down contract offers. He didn't like the money. He didn't like the terms. He didn't like the deal. Nobody on the UFC roster is scared of anybody else on the UFC roster.
Or he didn't like the timing.
Exactly. He didn't like the terms, whether it was the money or the timing. And now that you say that, it does kind of make me wonder a little bit because, you know, maybe he needs to bide this time. You know, maybe he needs to get a little time. And it does concern me because you are right. The longer that you're not the UFC champion, the longer that you have been away, the longer that people will kind of move past you, I feel like your marketing power kind of goes away a little bit, and that asking price starts dropping a little bit. You know, I've talked to Kevin Iole, who's deeply entrenched in boxing. He's a good friend of mine, and I'm like, well, look, I mean, he could probably get what, $30 million for a fight, and Kevin's not so comfortable that money is out there for him at $30 million. So, you know, I think your theory might be good, to be honest with you, and that why he can't take a fight right now or why he's not electing to push as hard as possible. Because I got to think the longer you wait, just the lower and lower that price becomes, unfortunately. You know, and if I'm being honest with you, and we said this, I don't like him necessarily against any of the top-level boxers. And that's no disrespect to Francis Ngannou. It's just it's an entirely different sport. I don't like any of the top-level boxers coming into mixed martial arts either. I think they'll lose. So I don't like his chances of winning those fights. I mean, he does have that one-shot power that can change everything, but I wanted him to get that opportunity to do it, and I wanted him to collect that paycheck. But the longer it takes, man, the more and more I get worried that now he's going to have to end up taking some other deal that's not anywhere close to what he thought it would be.
It poses the question, and I guess only time will tell. But which is also time will tell is to a detriment of the former UFC champion Francis Ngannou. But that leads me to what I really wanted to talk about today. The man who has caused us so much turmoil, albeit we have a tremendous amount of respect for him. The problem child, Jake Paul, has confirmed, it is confirmed, that he will be squaring off in boxing against the bad boy from Stockton, Nate Diaz. Jake Paul, 6-1 in boxing, takes on Nate Diaz with an 0-0 record in boxing. Man, are we excited for this one?
Look, it got me. I'll be honest with you. Number one, it's in Dallas, Texas, my hometown. So I'm going to go cover that. I'm going to go get to see my family. So that, from a personal perspective, it's exciting. But yeah, this one got me. You know, When Jake Paul was fighting Tommy Fury, I'll be honest with you, did not care one bit. Didn't care at all. I didn't watch it. I didn't lean into the buildup. I didn't care. When Jake Paul was fighting Tyron Woodley the second time, I didn't care. I cared about the first time. I didn't care about the second time. Back when he was fighting Nate Robinson, I didn't care. This one I care about, and I'll be honest with you, it's because it involves Nate Diaz. Jake Paul and Nate Diaz is intriguing to me. It's I worry a little bit. You know, Jake's the younger man. Jake's the bigger man. And so I worry about that a little bit. But Nate Diaz, battle tested as they come. You know, I think about the fight with Leon Edwards, where, I mean, it's just completely one-sided and every round's not going his way. And then in the fifth, he lands the big shot and points and laughs. And, I mean, amazing. You know what I mean? I think about that. And I do think, hey, we have seen some Jake Paul kind of gas tank issues because he is big, strong, muscular. We haven't necessarily seen him look good in later rounds of fight. So if Nate can survive that early storm, maybe he can contest late. So long-winded answer to your question. Yes, I'm actually excited for this one because it does involve Nate Diaz. This is one of our guys, right? I mean, this the way it was Anderson Silva was an MMA legend. Nate Diaz is an MMA legend. So I'm in. I'm in as
well. Okay. And
I'm worried, but I'm in.
Right. And I'm in too. And when Nate Diaz retired or quit the UFC, or however we want to phrase that situation, we both said on this podcast, do not go fight Jake Paul. Right? Now, and it's because I didn't think he has a chance of winning that fight. Now I look at this. I take a step back. I hadn't seen Nate in a while. I say, you know what? Nate pity patters. He's got endless cardio. He doesn't ever get hit clean. He's got great hands for an MMA guy. Nate might have a chance.
I'm telling you, and
I'm going to convince myself because I'm man, I'm not from the 209, but I'm from the 209 in this fight.
Look, I mentioned I talked to Bobby Green last week. Now, Bobby Green is a longtime training partner of Nate Diaz, right? And so obviously he's going to lean towards that side. But I did ask him. I said, "What do you think?" Because I'll be honest with you. I said the same thing, and I'll say it the whole time. I'm a little bit worried. The younger, stronger, bigger guy, man. And Bobby had a great point. He's like, think about Nate and Nick's style, right? It's a style that honestly sometimes isn't great for MMA, that is really made for boxing. They'll cover up a little bit, but they got those little tiny gloves so the punches still get through. Now they'll have the bigger gloves on, so the way they kind of cover up, and as you mentioned, shoulder roll and kind of move with the punches, slip some of the shots, and he thinks that'll work even better, and that is true. And he did acknowledge. He said, look, Jake Paul's got that big right hand, so we got to watch out for that big right hand. But if we can get through that and then push it on him late, when he starts to slow, because as you said, endless cardio. Nate Diaz is not going to slow down over the course of 8 rounds. That's for sure. So if he can pour it on him in 6, 7, 8, Bobby Green went so far as to say he thinks they can get a stoppage in 5 or 6. We'll see. But I mean, Nate's been tested. That's the thing, right? Nate gets rocked and he keeps coming. Like you can't get him to back down. He's a zombie coming at you and attacking. So, man. I'm into this one. And I mean, I'm worried about it. I am, but I'm into it. And by the way, can we talk about the press releases that came out where Nate said, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going back to the UFC, and I'm going to win my bet. We just finished talking about Francis. Yeah, belts. Multiple. He's got a bunch of them he's coming out to. And I love it. And even, it was interesting because even Jake Paul's quote in the press release said, I'm going to beat him up and then send him back to Dana or whatever. So when we just finished talking about Francis Ngannou, who Dana has come out and said, I'll never do business with him again. Now you got a guy like Nate Diaz who kept the doors open, didn't burn any bridges. This man is a master of the fight game. As much as I'm worried for Francis Ngannou, I look at Nate Diaz and say, man, look at how great he played this. He worked through his contract, didn't burn any bridges, set this match up. Going to cash in. I don't know how much money he's going to make on it, but I'm in, so he's getting my money. Going to collect that check and then come back to the UFC. Hopefully, I mean, we got to see that trilogy fight with Conor McGregor at some point. I mean, that's. I don't care what their records are at the time. I don't care what. We got to see that third fight between them, and we'll see what else is on the table. But I think Nate played this thing masterfully.
And to that point, Dana White said, I am gladly going to accept him back after this fight. He was asked about this in the post-fight presser, and he goes, I don't know. I hope they both do well and make $1 gazillion, and then I'd love to have Nate back afterwards.
So it's funny because I watched that exchange, and everybody likes to ask Dana about Jake Paul. People like to get Dana on rants, right? Because he will go on some rants, and he started to. I think obviously I've been around Dana for years. I mean, hundreds of interviews, hundreds of hours together of talking, of asking him questions, answering questions. I think I do a pretty good job of reading between the lines. I think Dana wanted to blast Jake Paul for once again not picking a boxer in his prime, but latching on to somebody who's at the tail end of his career, somebody that's significantly smaller than him. Obviously, Nate has fought down at 155 for a big portion of his career. I think Dana wanted to rip on Jake Paul, but I think the problem was he does still like Nate so much that he didn't want to offer that criticism that would kind of belittle Nate Diaz, right? You know, he didn't want to make Nate sound bad, but I think he's seeing what the reason we're saying, hey, it's a little concerning because Jake is the much younger guy. Jake is the much bigger guy, and that's why Jake picked this matchup. And Dana ultimately pulled back and said, not my guys. I don't want to talk about it, but I love Nate Diaz. But I think that's the reason he had to bite his tongue, because I think he's critical of Jake Paul, which I think you can still be critical perhaps of Jake Paul for picking this matchup. But for us as an MMA fan, I'm backing Nate Diaz.
Uncle Dana, I got you on this one. You ain't got a rant. I will. Okay? And I say this as I can't think of anybody who has praised Jake Paul in a, I don't know, I guess MMA media standpoint more than I have. I have always said this guy is legit. You need to take him serious. Not only is he a better marketing than everybody, he's got legit skills to back it up. And you know what? And I'm not going to criticize him for all of that. Until now. Am I free to go on my rant, Mr. Morgan?
Let's go. Let's hear it.
Jake Paul says he wants to be taken seriously as a professional boxer. Okay? He's fought a YouTuber. He's fought NBA guy. He's fought passer prime MMA guys. He has the one freaking opportunity to say, you know what? I'm fighting boxers. He fights a novice pro boxer in Tommy Fury. One who was on his undercard and looked like crap, albeit winning. He looked like crap against other pro boxers just to set this fight up with him and Tommy Fury. He loses a split decision victory. And guess what? The only reason it was a split decision is because some faint little knockdown that was in that fight. Okay? So he clearly lost to Tommy Fury. He got outboxed to a novice boxer in Tommy Fury. So what does he do? He follows the rinse and repeat pattern that he claims to want to be taken seriously as a pro boxer, that he's going to do this for the long haul, but then he falls back into his pattern of picking an older, on the back end of an MMA career, albeit a guy who fought the majority of his career at 155 freaking pounds in Nate Diaz. Jake Paul, I know it's a cash grab for you. This is not going to get you the respect that you want. End of rant.
Man, laying it out there, but I can't argue with a single point of it. You know what I mean? And I think it is important to note that you have been a big supporter of Jake Paul. So this is not somebody that's just a Jake Paul hater that's saying, I don't like this matchup. But I think you are right. If Jake Paul, the reason that you and I both praise Jake Paul a lot is because of we respect the hustle. We respect the fact that he's been able to figure out how to do this, how to collect millions of dollars without really fighting anybody in their prime. And the fact that he does, from all accounts, take the sport very seriously. Like, he does train like a professional. It's not like somebody that just, half-asses a training camp and then shows up and collects his money and goes home. Like, no, he dedicates. He lives the lifestyle. He's an incredible marketer, right? I mean, he does a great job of promoting events. And so we all respect that. But it's what you said. If that's all you're doing, and it's this influencer boxing, whatever you want to call it, and you're collecting some paychecks on it, go for it. But if you're saying, I do want to be taken seriously, like I do want to be a legit world champion, you're right. This isn't the matchup. I mean, this isn't what helps propel you forward whatsoever. If he wins, people are just going to say, well, of course you won. You're 14 years younger. You're naturally 20 pounds heavier. You made Nate come.
Easily naturally 20 pounds. Let's call it 35.
Yeah. So, I mean, people are going to say, like, and you've been training specifically in this discipline. Now, Nate does train a lot of boxing. I mean, he spars a lot of boxing, and but he's doing it as somebody that's getting ready for an MMA fight. You know what I mean? So it's not like they're doing it in a way to get ready for boxing. So you're right. I don't think if Jake wins this, he's going to get the type of praise that maybe he thinks he will from it, if that's what he's truly after. If all he's after is the money, you got it. I mean, this is smart. Nate is one of the most popular fighters in the sport today, and I've said it. And I mean, when Nick Diaz was the same way. When either of them a fight was announced, it didn't matter who was on the other side of the cage. You knew you were tuning in. I don't care who the opponent is. And so from that perspective, it's smart. The Nate Diaz army is going to come out in full force for this. They're going to cheer for their guy. They're going to make for a great scene in Dallas, Texas, man. I think that it's going to be a phenomenal environment, but it's an uphill battle for Nate Diaz. And I think if Jake wins it, I don't think he necessarily gets any type of, step forward in his career as a professional boxer. I think, yeah, he's going to draw some eyeballs. Hey, we've heard his last couple of matchups haven't done well financially. I think this probably will do well financially. I think this is more intriguing and more interesting, but I think it's going to do pretty well financially because of Nate Diaz's involvement, but I don't think it gives him any step forward in reputation as a boxer.
Jake Paul, I got a tremendous amount of respect for your skills. I have a tremendous amount of respect for your marketing and promotional ability. I had a tremendous amount of respect for the trajectory in which you were driving this. You did the right thing. Make a name off of beating these guys and beating these guys that people like me and John Morgan hold in such high esteem. But once you decided to make that move on to a boxer, I wanted to buy into Jake Paul showing what he can do. So you took a hiccup against a pro boxer that was the half brother of arguably one of the greatest fighters of all time. Right? So what? You took a hiccup. It was a very close fight. But now to come back and follow that pattern, I just have a problem with it. I think that your skills are better than that. I think your marketability is better than that. And listen, a guy like Jake Paul, man, big, talented, athletic, good-looking dude. It ain't about the money. It's about the ego at some point. He's making a ton of money, and now he wants to come out. And do you think this is a way just to get back at Uncle Dana, too?
It might be. I mean, you could tell Dana had to bite his tongue the other night not to say something. I think if, Dana's going to keep getting asked about it, you can believe that. I mean, he's told us in the MMA media, he's like, stop asking about Jake Paul. Like, I don't care. I don't want to talk about him. Stop asking about it. I'm not. And he's basically told us, when it's brought up, he kind of, shushes it off and says, look, I'm not answering any questions. But, when he's out there doing ESPN, when he's out there doing Pat McAfee, when he's out there talking to TMZ, they're inevitably going to bring that stuff up. And is he going to take the bait or not? We're going to find out. And if Jake beats Nate, somebody that's so well respected and well loved within the industry, is Dana going to be able to bite his tongue then? I don't know. So I hadn't thought about a little bit of the poking and prodding and attack factor on Dana, but there might be a little some of that in there too.
Well, join us in the conversation. You can tweet John Morgan at JohnMorgan_MMA. Great follow. Substandard follow is myself at E_MacLife. I just got to get better with my social game. You know what I mean? I guess I just haven't dedicated the time. You know what I mean?
I know it's tough, man. It is tough. It's still a foreign world to us in a lot of ways, man. That's where these young kids, man. That's where they own it. But it is a great way to interact with fans and a great way to get the message out there.
You can go ahead and watch these episodes on YouTube, grindcitymedia.com. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast needs. We appreciate all the feedback in our previous episodes, and we look forward to keep seeing where this podcast goes from here. This weekend, what you got going on?
So I'm heading out to Tampa, Florida on Wednesday for Thursday night on UFC Fight Pass. We got CFFC 119, so make sure you tune in on UFC Fight Pass. Myself, my man CM Punk on the call for that. Always great down at the Hard Rock, Seminole Hard Rock, Tampa, man. It's always packed in there. I think it's our 5th straight sellout of that venue for CFFC, so I'm looking forward to that. Fly back on Friday, and I'll be at the UFC event on Saturday at the UFC Apex, but like I said, man, you got one championship, you got Bellator on TV as well, so there's a whole lot of MMA to watch this weekend. How about you? I think you got a pretty busy schedule going on right now, don't you?
Man, we're in the NBA playoffs, so we played the Lakers yesterday. We're playing again the Lakers, and then Friday driving up to Nashville. I will be competing in the Nashville International IBJJF Open on Saturday for Gi, and then Sunday for no Gi. I'm going for double gold. Actually, I'm gonna try and go quad goals. If I medal, I'm gonna do absolute in both
absolutes
divisions
as well. Hey, that's awesome, man. Best of luck to you, dude. People that might not realize, if you're Gi and no Gi are two, you might think it's the same thing. It's two entirely different sports, man. Entirely different sports. So kudos to you for for competing in both at the same time. That's not an easy task.
I don't know if you can tell, man. My jawline's becoming a little pronounced. I
like it.
just kind of let myself go, a little bit. And I like stepped on the scale about 3 weeks ago and I said, oh, shoot.
That's why you just don't step on the scale.
So that's what I got going on, but it's going to be fun. I'm going to bring the family with me and, we'll just have a good time. I got some teammates going and we're going to make it a family affair. So it's going to be pretty fun. But anyways, man, a lot to talk about. Jake Paul, sorry to do that to you, man. Tremendous amount of, it's out of love, Jake Paul. Like, I'd love to hate and hate to love. Logan Paul, your brother, you're doing amazing stuff too. Like, I can't hate on these guys for what they're doing. Just Jake Paul, if you want to be taken as seriously as the boxer that you claim you are, this is not the move. But guess what? You're getting my $59.99.
Yep.
So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for the day. For John Morgan, I am Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.